Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Business of Fun podcast. I'm your host, Dave Wakeman. My guest today is John Reider. He is the CEO of Magic Bubbles, and we are going to talk about Magic Bubbles, the bubble bus, pet bubbles, all kinds of bubbles, but really we're going to talk about leadership, entrepreneurship, enjoying your work, all kinds of cool things. Before I get to my conversation with John, though, I want to remind you of a few things. Check out my website. It's davewakeman.com. I am going to release in the next few days, if all things go correctly, an event in Indianapolis, Indiana. A one-day event, some training. It's going to be great. I'm just putting the final touches on it. I'm making sure the agenda works. It'll be towards the end of April, start of May. I got to finalize the date, but check it. It's going to be on the website. You can sign up for the newsletter, Talking Tickets. Get yourself some tickets, or you can get the Business of Value. Just put your name or your email address in that little drop-down box. It'll be good to go for you. Let me know what's going on in your world. It's dave@davewakeman.com. I'd like to hear from you. Tell me some guests you'd like to hear. Tell me something you learned on the podcast, stories you're thinking about, ideas you're looking at. All this stuff helps me keep everything fresh and great for you. So over to John here. John Reider is the CEO of Magic Bubbles. Him and his wife started this business about 20 or 25 years ago in St. Louis. The founding story of it's pretty cool because we get to talk about market research. We get to talk about understanding ideas, how ideas evolve over time, how you develop products, how you change your new products, how you deal with failure and success. We talk about understanding customers, manufacturing, where ideas come from. We talk about the leap of faith that's necessary in both creating a business and in creating new products. We talk about how you have to pick yourself back up sometimes, or how you can learn from failures and successes. We talk about some of the magic of working with people and around people. We got into a lot of stuff. This is a great conversation. I just recorded it maybe a half hour ago, so it's really fresh in my mind. I enjoyed talking to John because he has just like this great energy, in his background when we were talking over Zoom, actually over Teams, it was amazing, and he had these great glasses on. So it was a pretty cool conversation with John Reider on the Business of Fun. All right, I would like to welcome John Reider, the Bubble Man himself, to the Business of Fun podcast. John, thank you for being here. People can't see the background, but the background really brings a little bit of extra love to the Business of Fun. How are you, man?
Dave, thanks for having me. I'm wonderful. Other than it being freezing cold here in St. Louis today, I'm peachy.
It's cold. It's cold at my house too. That's why I have the big bulky sweatshirt on. Again, that's why we don't do any video, so people don't have to see like we're totally wrapped up here. Right. But it's awesome to have a chance to connect with you and talk to you, because as I explained to you, there's a lot of people that listen who are in the entertainment business, and then there's a lot of people who listen for branding and strategy. And I think that number one, Magic Bubbles is amazing. You have a Magic Bubbles for pets, who you can't see her, but Penny the Bulldog is like, I heard you talk about dogs behind me. And then you also have the Bubble Bus. So I want to get into all of that stuff. But first, give everybody a little bit of background about you and how you came to be the Bubble Man himself.
Sure. Well, I tell you what, I'm a 60-year-old guy now, and probably 2.5 decades ago, my wife and I started dabbling in bubbles. I found a gentleman who had invented a product called Techno Bubbles, which was a glowing black light bubble. The guy was smart enough. He invented these things. He patented them, so they were protected for 20 years. Long and short of it, I bought some bubbles. They were super cool, loved them. We ended up buying his patents and trademarks and formulas, and that's how my wife and I, Beth, got into the bubble business some 25 plus years ago, man.
Yeah, black light bubbles. I mean, in a former life, I mean, actually, in a present life too, it would work really wonders. But black light bubbles would totally have worked in the nightclubs. So tell me about the Magic Bubble business then, because you do have many areas that you work on and you focus on. So let's, and I think one of the things is, because the audience is a little diverse, it helps to understand like how the business comes together, because I'll just use my own experience. for example, was like when you reached out, I was like, man, how am I going to make this work? And like, how can I make this interesting? And then as soon as like we started peeling back the layers and saw all the ways the business works, I was like, oh, this is a great story. But can you explain to people, what's going on with your business? Because I think it's interesting how many different ways you've been able to make bubbles your business.
Yeah, yeah, so we found these glowing blacklight bubbles years ago, and we had to figure out a way to get them introduced to the world. So we started doing bubble events just to promote the bubbles. And what we didn't know was that the world was hungry for bubble event parties. So we got into a product that we thought was going to be cool. I thought it was going to be the next pet rock, and it wasn't. So we started blowing bubbles to just promote these glowing blacklight bubbles, and we found that people love the idea of going to a bubble party. So hence we kind of fostered the bubble bus out of that business, the event business. We had no idea it was out there. Started in an old pickup truck, then an old Caprice Classic station wagon, hand painted some school buses, and now we run in in a Nissan digitally wrapped vehicle that's very professional, very very well tuned. So the event business kind of came to us. We didn't really think about it; it just came to us. And then we have a manufacturing aspect of things and a retail line too. We found out that the bubble buses and blowing bubbles for a living, you go through a lot of bubble juice. So we used to, in the early days, we bought bubbles from guys who would sell it to us in 55-gallon drums. There wasn't many of them. And then the guy we had who was our sole provider sold it off to China. And then I found myself like with no bubbles and having to find out a way to formulate. So we went to work and learned how to make our bubbles. So, we have a manufacturing facility. We have a product line, which we'll get into here in a little bit about, we had to do some special branding on that. And then the event business just kind of, it was one of those things that, the market found us. It was one of those kind of Cinderella stories. It was super cool. And that's alive and well, to this very day. It's cold here today, but once it starts warming up, man, bubbles will be blowing here and in 4 states. We have 10 bubble buses running in 4 states right now.
Yeah, let me ask you about this then, because you started out with the blacklight bubbles, and then you kind of were like, "Oh, this is great." And, I didn't know, but I didn't know that there was a market for people wanting to go to bubble parties, is what you said. And then the market kind of found this as like a Cinderella story. I don't know if that sounds right though. I think you did like some market research and you were close to people. So how did it originally you understand that like the blacklight bubbles was going to work? Like, there had to be an inkling of discovery involved because you bought this from somebody who had invented it. Like, you're not this like the crazy inventor guy. You actually were like going, I think I see a market for this. Where did that come from?
Yeah. So I think I've always been entrepreneurial, and I think anybody who's in business, and probably a lot of your listeners are entrepreneurs, entertainers, and having that spirit. I think when I saw those first techno bubbles, I thought they were the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and had to get my hands on them. And then once I got my hands on them, it's like, I knew there was a market for them. The first market we found for them, Dave, was the haunted house industry. Every haunted house in America, we started advertising these things at haunted house trade shows, which was really fun, and they're very creative people, and launched it that way. But yeah, I think just something in my gut. It wasn't anything, because these bubbles didn't exist really. This guy had made them and patented them, but just there was something in my gut that said, "Hey, man, this is cool, and there's something here." And again, that product didn't make us millionaires, but it launched us into other things than that we've been able to make, a very viable business out of for myself and my family.
Okay, so you went to the haunted house trade shows,
right?
And then and the business kind of evolved from there. And what I guess what I'm looking for is like I want to help people understand how you evolve from your initial idea.
Sure.
Because what I was interested in when we were discussing doing this was how like you talk about, you got the bubble bus now, you did the pets, you threw the parties, you got the manufacturing. And what it is you took one idea and you've evolved it. And that's one of the lessons I want to teach people, because I think that people struggle with that. Like, right? It's like if the idea is not staring them in the face, they don't know how to evolve things and how to continue to keep growing. And like you said, entrepreneurship helps you, like you're always kind of poking around the edges and digging for what's next. Can
Right.
you explain that a little bit more to people so they can kind of have an understanding of how for lack of a better term, because you're the bubble man, you play with the idea to come up with the next idea that you can use to discuss, to keep growing and keep developing.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with um, maybe a partial failure. Like the bubbles weren't the immediate success that I thought they were going to be, Dave. Okay. And I
Okay.
really thought that people were going to get them, understand them. And I thought every store in America was going to put them on their shelf. And, that really didn't happen. And so I had to go back to work and say, hey, how are we going? I had invested all this money in the patents and
Mm-hmm.
and things. And, I have a house mortgage and everything. In fact, my wife took, and I took a loan out against the house to buy this. And so monetarily, I had to kind of solve the problem. And so being open when I was doing those bubble events and parties, and then people would keep asking us, and then the phone would start ringing, and it's like they start asking, they were asking for bubble parties and not the bubbles. So I had to say, wow, there's a market here for bubble parties that didn't even know. And I think being open to that, being open to change, not getting stuck in that rut as we were talking about earlier. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, man, that initial, my initial thought of success didn't happen. It wasn't the sale of these products. It was what spurred out from there by us getting out there. And, you say you have a lot of entertainers to listen to you, that's actually what I was. I was a bubble entertainer. If you kind of, when I was out in the street, I had to make the events fun. The bubbles were great, but a lot of it had to do with my excitement and my energy
Yeah.
and being out there and selling and promoting the product, So I think being open to something that doesn't go your way,
Yeah.
and not just closing the door on the bubbles. It's like, what else can the bubbles bring me? And that's what thank goodness I was able to roll to that.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting here is, and you maybe not even, you say it's being open, but I think to me, this is a lesson I try to teach people all the time, which is that like, you're not the customer, right? Like John, you were like, these bubbles are going to be amazing. And you made a bet based on like, I think these bubbles are going to be great. I have done this a lot, right? I tell people like my biggest failure is like the thing that created my biggest success, which is like I didn't do market research at one nightclub location. Failed spectacularly. I was 24, but I had lost everything I had except for like the last like $700, and I was like able to rebuild myself from there. And that thing became, I needed to listen to the world around me. And what I hear coming from you is that willingness to listen to the customer. Am I wrong in saying that that's really like the key to like the evolution is like you keep listening to people?
That is absolutely, yes, you put that into what I was trying to convey, right? My customers thought the bubbles were cool, but they were more interested in me going out there and producing the fun that became the event business. And we did listen to it. And I had to listen, like you said, you spent your last $700, man. It's like, I started listening because, we needed to make some dollars. And, and, lo and behold, yeah,
Desperation is a great teacher.
you know what? It does. I think you hit it right on the head, man. You have to see, you may have a thought of what you think is successful, and in your mind, it's the greatest thing, or this is, your nightclub, it was going to be the coolest thing, right? But the people coming through, if the people coming through the door don't think so, it's not going to be a success. It's not going to work, Yeah, that's a great point, is just being open, listen to what people want. That's how you're going to sell stuff.
Right. And I was going to say, if the key to me, and I'll be curious what your opinion is on it, is like, is listen to what people want, right? And then give them that, right? Like figure out a way to give it to them. Because I think what jams people up a lot of times is that they listen to people, they maybe hear something that they want, but then they feel like they have to come up with like this magic thing, right? Like you were just like sitting there going, I got these bubbles. People want the, they don't want the bubble, they want to party with the bubbles, right? So then that's not a huge leap. That's not a huge evolution, right? That's just like, let me figure out how to do this, right? It's a huge thing. Innovation is a lot of like creeping little steps, or am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's perfect example of that is us then what we're doing now. As we were talking off air, it was, we have this line of pet bubbles that we've developed for the pet industry. That idea came about by someone mentioning, a dog lover friend of mine saying, John, if you made some pet bubbles or made a bubble that was safe for pets and dogs and cats would love to play with them, you may be able to sell a lot of them. And so we're in the bubble business. We know how to make bubbles. We know how to blow bubbles. So the leap going from what we were already doing to reformulating and then getting it in front of the pet people, it was not a huge leap. It was very easy for me to just kind of go to the right a little bit and figure out some new formulations, figure out what scents would make dogs and cats go crazy and engage them. And then employing, getting smart people around me that were brilliant with branding and graphics and all that stuff. And lo and behold, that line took probably the least amount of effort that we've ever put in, and it's been the most successful.
So you said it was easy for you to jump to the right a little bit and like move into this new area.
Right.
Can you go a little deeper on that? Because I think people, I can understand why it is, because if you're already comfortable with trade shows and you're already comfortable with the marketing of the company, there's probably I'm guessing there's a little bit of a retail and distribution aspect that you already do. So it's kind of just like a little bit of a shift in your brand. But can you walk people through this a little bit so they can so maybe they can understand how it would apply to them a little more?
Sure. So, I mean, for us, we had certain formulations. I was fortunate enough to be the manufacturer of my bubbles. So going from formulation to formulation took time, but I was, having control of like whatever you're doing, I think is really important. Whether in my early days, I was a magician, and I loved magic and did that going, like up through high school. But there comes a point in time where are you doing mentalism? Are you doing card tricks? Are you sawing the lady in half? I mean, are you a stage guy? What are you doing? So I mean, from that evolution, I think. I'm trying to think here. It was just. It was hard work, had to find out what the next step was. Okay. Because, I knew that the market there, I thought the market was there, but just didn't know how to get there. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job of answering your question, Dave.
No, you're doing. I probably jammed you up. That's me. That part about control, I think is, to me, it's interesting because, and maybe this is, I'll be curious about your take on this. I like to maintain control as much as possible. Like you talk about formulation to formulation's easy.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to test things. And my thing is always like, I want to look for like the smallest test audience I can find. I don't want to like have this huge product launch. I want to be able to test quickly, see if it works, and move on.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like what you're doing. So if we look at the pet bubbles, how did that work? Because I would be curious, because I don't know much about manufacturing bubbles, but I would assume that like it's not like you're making a bathtub full of bubbles. There's a little bit more into it than that. But you're still able to maintain your ability to test the product and figure out whether it works or not.
Right. Right. So, we, everybody, I mean, I was fortunate since pandemic, and that's when we kind of launched the pet bubble. That's when we got the idea during pandemic, when everybody was locked up and everybody was, getting pets in their world. We were very fortunate to have a lot of friends with pets. And I happen to know some people who own some franchise big doggy daycare centers.
Okay.
We were able to test market the products with them. And they gave us some amazing feedback. Like we had initially come up with a bacon bubble, a peanut butter bubble, a birthday cake scented bubble, one that smelled like pumpkin, one that smelled like banana. And we gave all these bubbles out, and they just tried them with their dog. And it was a pretty small test area. I mean, we didn't really do a huge testing on it. We found that a lot of people were having, like, they were saying, "Hey, my dog's moving to these things. Wow, they're jumping and they're chomping at these things." And for me, that was kind of good enough. My gut was telling me we were in the right spot, and so we spun some labels and put it out there and tried to introduce it to anyone we could who would be interested.
And so on something like that, right? How much your gut, right? But then you did market research, your gut, right? And I teach people too. It's like there's a point where you have to take a leap of faith in your product development, and then you can test it, right? And so it sounds like you're following the process that I teach people about. So that's great. Thank you for validating this. So, but how big, when you first start rolling out the labels and doing this, like how big of a batch are we talking about? Like, how much do you, how big of a hit does it need to be before to validate your thinking, like to say it keeps going?
Right. I mean, any business, we're kind of a bootstrap company. We're, my wife and I own it. We don't have huge investors. So, cash is king. And, so we started, I mean, we hand labeled a couple hundred bottles and started passing them out. We started a website. There was a local brick and mortar store that was nice enough to put us on the shelf. But literally, we started with hand filling them, on the bench, and literally just with a couple of, 100 bottles. When we saw that they started moving and that people were liking them and we were getting good response, logical things for us is then I go to production runs of labels that, you have to commit to 25,000, 50,000 labels. You have to buy your bottles in 50 to 100,000 batches, that's tractor trailer stuff, And so, but it is that leap of faith. I mean, I think the most important thing for someone is to really be passionate and believe in what they're doing, because the world will tell you no a lot. The world will tell you that, hey, this isn't going to work, or those little gremlins in your brain will start attacking you late at night and like, what the hell am I doing? But for me, fortunately, I think I've been able to keep the passion alive, and I think it's from shifting. We started with the glow bubbles, and we started with the event business and made some wonderful things. The manufacturing was great, and now it's really exciting being 60 years of age. I think I'm more excited about coming into work every day at 60 than I ever was as I wish I could spin back those hands of time, buddy. But I'm enjoying my work life more now today than I ever have in my whole life. And I'm, most people my age are looking at retirement, man. It's like, man, what am I going to do for the next 10 years,
Yeah, no, I was going to say I was going to say that there's this thing you said about like wishing you could spin back the hands of times, and I think though that like probably you need those experiences to get you to the point where you can appreciate these things. Like I, using my market research failure as the thing, I needed that experience to be able to do everything else. And so I'm kind of curious, like, how like some of your formative experiences help prepare you to be the bubble man now.
Right. You make a great point. I know in my life, I've learned the biggest lessons, not when I've been successful, Dave, but when I've had failure, and I think so many times, people can look at that and throw their hands up, be defeated. But you're right. I mean, it took John Reider 60 years to kind of get that life experience that I needed to kind of be in the place that I am today. And, I think there's this karma thing out there, right? That things happen when they're meant to happen. And, there's been other businesses and other products I've had before that, I look up to the sky and say, God, why didn't this work for me? Right? Why didn't this idea work for me? And I think now where I'm at, all those previous, I think people forget about that. You look at successful people in your life and you think that they've always been successful, and you
Right.
think that they've always had money, or you think that they've always been smart. What you didn't, what you don't sometimes see is the 40 years that it took to get there.
Oh, that's 100% correct. I remember when I first moved to New York City, maybe 2002. I was at a bar in Brooklyn near my apartment, and I was getting dinner, and this woman came up to me, and she goes, "I bet you've never struggled a day in your life." And I was like, "Going, I am like whatever, like 27, 28 years old," and I was like, "What? I have never known a day when I haven't struggled." And some people, and I think this is important because at a people, they just see you now, right? They see John, and they go, "Oh, the Bubble Man, like you must have always been here." Right? Or they see, they see me, and they like, "Oh, you must have always been able to do these things." And I was like, well, no. The thing is like you had to. I got scraped up plenty of times, right? And I think, and it's, I wish that people understood the struggle more. There's got to be, some successes along the way, or you just give up. That's true. But I guess I'm curious, since you brought this up, is like, how did you train yourself or teach yourself or convince yourself to keep going? Because it is hard, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, like even with like my consulting work or like some of the stuff like products I've launched or some of the businesses I've done,
Right.
80% of them probably have failed. But it's the strength and the courage to keep going that allows me to do these things. Because again, like you did with the dog bubbles or the pet bubbles, sorry, I don't want to do that. It's you make it so that it's not catastrophic, right? And that was the other lesson from like market research, right? Because nightclubs are expensive, and if those fail, you lose a lot of money. It's make sure that no failure is catastrophic. No failure destroys you. So how do you keep going? And like, how did you teach yourself to keep going?
I would love to say that everything came from within, that, I was able to do this on my own. I think keeping positive and just keeping up is very important. But I'll tell you personally, I mean, I really can't do it by myself. My lovely wife, who's my business partner, is a key ingredient of that. I have some really good people around me in my business and in my life. Some who know nothing about the bubble business, right? But are there.
Mhm.
I think men especially sometimes isolate themselves. We become
Mhm.
this island, and we think that we can do it by ourselves. But I think I know that it's been through a group of people that I have in my, like,
Yeah.
who are in my court. Again, I try to do the best I can, but without positive people, surround yourself with people who will help you
Yeah.
and not bring you down, man. I mean, attract who you want, yeah, like who you want to be. And I think that's a thing of attraction is if you're putting off this vibe of positivity and stuff, people will find you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's easy to get in that rabbit hole, man, for sure. And those are dangerous moments, and we all get there. I've been there, you've been there. But I think I get out of it a lot quicker by having really good people around me and talking, communicating, asking
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
Why did I fail, guys? What am I doing wrong? Why aren't people, why don't people want to work for me? Am I that big of a jerk? What am I,
Yeah.
what's happening here? And then, as you said too earlier, listen to what your friends are telling you, your people who you trust and who are
Yeah.
your confidants. Listen to that feedback, because a lot of times they're right and you may not want to hear it, but you got to
Yeah.
take it in.
Yeah. It's curious because I hear the people tell me all the time. They go, "Well, I should listen to everybody," and I go, "You can't listen to everybody. That's just a formula for chaos." What you've formulated, and I think it's important for people to understand, is to create. I've heard it described as like your own board of directors or your own like sort of like mastermind group, or
Yeah.
really in my case, it's just I have a really good group of friends, and we just are there for each other. And, I'm pretty sure like most of the time we don't talk about our businesses at all. It's just like we're able to unload whatever.
Right.
And I think like you can't listen to everybody, but you have to have that core group of people, and that to me, that's super important in the idea of like not isolating yourself. I also walk a lot. Walking helps everything.
Yeah. 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 I find out too, like when I'm sweating, like, the greatest thing about, like when I'm doing an event or something like that, and it's hard work, you're driving your bubble bus there and you got to schlep the equipment out. And a lot of your entertainers know that. I mean, a lot of your
Yeah.
guys, probably guys and gals probably set up their own stages and do their own thing and, are getting sweaty. But, that's a great feeling for me. I mean, people always ask me, it's like, how do you stay in, I'm not in great shape, but I'm in decent shape. It's like, man, I'm working bubble events. I'm out there working my butt off. But I mean, that kind of is a release to me too.
Yeah.
I'm out there working. I know that, that sweat, I always feel better after, I have a sweaty shirt that day. I mean, for some reason, it's like all those toxins kind of come out of my body.
Oh, 100%. The moving your body, like if you, I still remember like some of the, I describe it as like going into like a meditative state, which is like totally great, but it was like setting up bars and nightclubs, like, just like doing the like grunt work of bar backing. It's like getting the ice, putting the beers out, stocking the thing, like, because you're just like sort of, it's a checklist and like you can kind of like, you don't have to focus on it so much. You know exactly what you're doing. It's kind of automatic and it's like it lets you just kind of decompress. And then you'd be stinky and sweaty and you need to go take a shower before. But it was like the greatest feeling. It's like so, it's a relief, I think.
Right, right. And I think today, like looking at one of the biggest struggles I have in Bubble Bus and my wife and I have is finding good crew members. Okay, finding folks to actually run. There's no shortage of people who run our events, Dave, but trying to get manpower and I'll say good workers these days, it's hard. And I think what a lot of the younger kids don't realize, man, is that, they don't have that work ethic, man, like they don't know what it is. Like everybody wants to have that, like that work from home digital job where they're sitting at their computer all day, man. There is so much good, man, that comes out of just kind of a good hard day's work and, putting your time in and grunting, like you said, bar backing, man, that's tough stuff.
Yeah, that was like some hard work, but you carry a keg around on your shoulders like this, it'll it'll do something for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
4 cases of beers.
Yeah,
It's totally like,
and I think if there's a way where you can, maybe some of your entertainers out there are, with what they do, maybe there's some physical aspects to that, as well, depending on what type of entertainer they are, man. I mean, I love it in my business, like even, when I'm done with this interview, we're going to go out, I'm going to go out to the production line and we're going to, what I call bang out bottles, man. We're going to fire up the line and you can get a head of steam going out there too, man, with the bubbles flying down the line and whatnot. But there's no better feeling at the end of the day, man, where you see, I see a pallet full of goods that are ready to ship.
Yeah.
And I'm tired and I look back and it's like, it's satisfaction. I think we all need to have that, what have we accomplished today, right? It's like a painter who paints a room. You can see what you've done. And I think that's so important to people in the entertainment industry. Hey, did my customers go away smiling? Did they laugh? Did they cry, depending on what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Did you change? Were you able to change that, them just for that moment, just to transfix them to just that moment, even if you're just with them a half hour, an hour, did you make a difference in their lives? And I think for me, that's a lot of, because, my business is hard. The bubble event business, it's we've made it a success, but it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, and if I'm not way off base here, there's 3 things that I think are important to highlight for people from this conversation. Number one, if you're, no matter what business you're in, I think what you're looking for is you want to understand if you've made a transformation, if you changed the people for the better in some way. Number 2 is like, you're looking to make a difference, especially if you're in entertainment or events, because that's really what you have the easiest access to. And then number three, I think both of us understand the power of staying close to our business and to our customers, right? Like being the bar back and set up your own bar before the night starts and like you have to open your bar. That you stay close to you stay really close to the business, like both on the back end and the front end, doing the bubbles and doing the events and working the line. You stay close to your business. You understand exactly what's going on, and I think sometimes people get into these ruts because I think we started talking about at the start about ruts, is because they forget to be close to their business. They forget what it's like to interact with people. They forget what it's like to make a difference, to change people, to see what it really like, see the business through the eyes of others. I think that might be, like my big takeaways.
I think you hit wonderful. You hit. Let me turn this here for some reason. Thank goodness. You hit some very key points there. I think if you stay close to what you're doing, I mean, we've all seen it when a company changes hands. Okay, like mom and dad built this business, and then the next generation takes it over. And if you don't stay, well, the reason mom and dad were successful is because they knew the customers, they knew their customers, they knew them by name, they knew what they liked, and I think if you remove yourself from that, you're missing a huge opportunity and a huge opportunity for yourself in like self-growth and self-satisfaction. I mean, it's wonderful to help people and know them.
I couldn't agree more. John, how can people find you? Let's plug some stuff now. How do people find you? How can they connect with you? Let's plug.
Love it, man. So atomicbubbles.com is our website, just the way it sounds. Atomicbubbles, one word, .com is the best place for you to connect. There's an info page there, and all of our products and things are online there. Bubblebus.com is the event business. If you want to see what it's like in the day in the life of a bubble man, you can get some sort of idea there. And if you're looking for our products, most of the major e-commerce sites have us, and you can find us on Amazon, Etsy, eBay, or our own personal website there at Atomic Bubbles. So
awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for doing this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dave.
Let me know what you thought of my conversation with John. Send me an email. It's my name, Dave, at davewakeman.com. Visit my website, davewakeman.com. Make sure you get the newsletters, Talking Tickets in the Business of Value. I've been releasing these assessments about your premium seating strategy, your sales strategy, and your strategy in general in these newsletters. So this is me codifying a lot of my work, the teaching I do, all these things in ways that can help people discover where they need to put their attention and learn some new things about their businesses. So check them out. As I mention all the time, make sure you share the podcast if you found it valuable, which if you've made it this far, you definitely have, and I appreciate you for listening. Rate it and review it. It helps me make sure I continue to get great guests, deliver great conversations, and do fun stuff for you. As always, I want to thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again soon. Take it easy.